across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is a nice surprise, isn't it? Well, it is for me anyway. I'm really glad to be here with you for the next 3 hours, and of course coming up at midnight it is your chance to talk back. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, it's the biggest story in town. I suspect it'll be all over the front pages as well, giving them a chance to reflect on the Home Secretary, who today spoke in the Commons about her new plans, her new tougher plans for asylum seekers and refugees, those people coming across on boats. So we'll go through all of the details on that at midnight, and also in a few moments' time, actually, with my couple of guests at the top of the programme. But I just wonder if you think, do you believe this will actually happen? Look, the backbenchers, and we already know how powerful the backbenchers are, right? Because they were able to persuade Keir Starmer to do a complete U-turn very quickly on the cuts to the welfare bill. And the backbenchers are not happy with Shabana Mahmood. They're saying that this is racist, that this is really bad policy, that this is not who we are. But she's saying, look, this illegal migration, these people who are asking for support as refugees and asylum seekers, are dividing the country. And I think that maybe they are not dividing the country, but the narrative around them is definitely dividing the country. This government trying to take these people out of hotels and put them into army accommodation. Of course, there have been marches against that as well. So, you know, it is a mess. We know this whole system is a mess. And just so you know, the Denmark model that the Home Secretary has based these new rules upon, that wasn't very popular either to begin with, because it's a left-leaning party that brought them in. It wasn't a right-leaning party that brought in these changes. And it wasn't very popular, still isn't actually very popular with the Liberals in Denmark. But look, it has reduced their migration numbers quite significantly. So I personally believe that politicians are incredibly self-serving. Not the first time I've said that. And if they see that this is popular with the public, and therefore means that they could potentially win the next election, I think their moral judgment will slip away slightly, and that they will fall in behind the Home Secretary. But I'd love to know what you think. Do you think that this is going too far, seizing of assets, although she didn't mention that today? Later on this week, she is going to be discussing some legal routes that asylum seekers can take, and this is what I've always been calling for. If you provide safe legal routes for asylum seekers, you can then declare that those coming across on boats are breaking into the country illegally. You can't really at the moment, because it's not illegal to claim asylum, right? So you're illegal only once your asylum claim has been rejected. So there's a lot of questions around this, but has she found the answer? Should we be taking their assets if they have any? Should we be deporting whole families? That seems to be a really big sticking point at the moment. What about the 20-year wait to be able to become a naturalised citizen, as opposed to 5 years? And I just want to know is this too little too late? Are these policies going to work? Are the Labour backbenchers really going to fall in behind this, calling Shabana Mahmood a racist for what she's coming up with? Reform, Richard Tice saying, well, you could join Reform if you want to. It sounds like Reform policies. If we'd said it, we'd be shouted at. So I just want to sort of get a gauge from you if you're going to be supporting this and backing this, because that's what her backbenchers will need to see or hear if they then too fall in behind her. So do give me a call. It's your chance to talk back at midnight, a full hour of conversation between you and me. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need, and you can text as well, put the word talk and then your message to 87222. So all of that is coming up, but because we've got an extra hour today, we're going to be talking about why Donald Trump has suddenly done a U-turn on the release of the Epstein files. Does he know something that we don't? So we'll be talking about that. And as I was mentioning to Kev just a minute ago, the very real and really quite pathetic and disgusting act of stolen valour. This is when people pretend that they've had a much bigger part in the military, that the medals that they've got, they perhaps bought them online, that they earned those medals. Now, men and women have died for those medals when they've actually gone and fought for them, or they've gone to defend, like in Bosnia. People died. They deserve those medals. They work for those medals. They're separated from their families for 6 months to 9 months to a year, depending on what branch of the military they're in. They earn those medals. And for somebody to pretend that they've done the same thing, I think it's beyond disgusting. So we'll be talking about that as well. But first, as I said, turning our attention back to the government publishing its new asylum policy this afternoon. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, set out the biggest shake-up to immigration since the Second World War. Amongst the plans, families and children would also be subject to enforced returns, and refugees will have to spend 20 years in the UK before being allowed to apply for settled status. Well, joining me now is Dr. Alex Powell, Professor of Law at Warwick University and specialist in UK refugee law. Dr. Powell, nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Now, there's many a slip twixt cup and lip, isn't there? This might be what Shabana Mahmood wants to do, but I'm assuming that there'll be lots of legal pressures for her not to be able to do it, particularly with family returns.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I mean, I think obviously there are firstly many legal barriers that will potentially stand in the way, and I think the government has themselves recognised that with their specific references to the need for reform of Article 8 of the ECHR as it pertains to the UK and Article 3 in terms of them seeking to implement changes there. But I think, moreover, there's also a bigger issue here with the government's proposals, and that is the presumption that deterrence is an effective element. And actually, if you look at the evidence, including the Home Office's own evidence, it is pretty universal in terms of establishing the idea that the majority of people coming to the UK do not have a particularly strong understanding of reception conditions. So things like access to the labour market, which you can see is massively restricted within these regulations and has been continued to be restricted, in fact, in the UK over many years. There's sort of this presumption that that will lead to less people coming. It's a very commonsensical answer, but actually study after study suggests that these are not particularly salient in the reason for people making journeys.
Well, so, no, presumably because those traffickers and those people who are making money are not going to point out the negatives they just want the money for that trip across on the boat. The rest of it they don't care about. But when you look at deportations, even if that doesn't work as a deterrent for many years, eventually that message does get through. Eventually, if people see that they are deported or they're not allowed to remain in the UK, or once their country has been that they left has been deemed safe to return, that message will get through. And I think that the British people want to see those deportations.
Well, I think there's a complexity there. You know, the example that the government has cited frequently is Denmark. And in Denmark, we have seen, for example, the revocation of refugee status in regard to a number of people from Syria. And yet the vast majority of those people where refugee status have been revoked actually have not been removed. They continue to reside in Denmark, and they continue to reside at the cost to the taxpayer. And actually, I think there is a real need here to pay cautious attention to how the evidence plays out. The reality is that many of the elements implemented by government in recent years, and again within this policy, so take for example the 2.5-year review, what that actually looks like in practice is a massive amount more resource being required by the Home Office, people less able to find stable employment after they've secured refugee status, people less able to find stable housing after they've secured refugee status. So the likely implication of that is actually further cost put onto the taxpayer. And I do think it's really, really important here that we keep account of how the repeated iteration of immigration as this really, really significant issue creates people's desire to see, for example, deportations. And actually, if we had a more measured conversation where we recognize that people make dangerous journeys, as you yourself said in the introduction, partly because of the lack of safe and legal routes. At the moment, we often hear politicians talk about this idea of queue jumping, but the reality is from a very large number of countries, there are not really any legal means by which someone can come to the UK to seek asylum. It's quite limited. And so I was pleased, in fact, to see mention of safe and legal routes. It's nice to see that coming into government language. It's not something we saw, for example, under the last government in anything like the frequency.
Which I've never understood, by the way, because that is the clearest option in my view. If you provide safe and legal routes, then you can determine that making entry any other way is illegal, which they can't at the moment. The legal routes were closed, weren't they? There used to be a system where you could go to a neighbouring country. You couldn't do it in your own country, but go to a consulate in a neighbouring country and apply for asylum there. Why was that cut? And is that the best way now to reintroduce legal entry?
So in terms of why were legal routes cut, I think you can see a very similar dynamic to, for example, why people seeking asylum have been restricted from accessing employment, to why people have been restricted from living in communities. The government and successive governments, in fact, have I will use the word obsession with the idea of a pull factor thesis. You'll have seen Shabana Mahmood repeatedly saying, we need to cut down the pull factor thesis. Again, the evidential basis for the pull factor thesis is reasonably limited, but what it means is that governments are responding to this idea that if the conditions are good and it is possible to come to the UK, more people will come. The evidence suggests that the reasons why people make journeys are more likely to be related to familial relationships, linguistic ties, and obviously the UK, because of its history, there is a large number of people who have familial relationships, linguistic ties to the UK. So in terms of what would be a system for safe and legal routes, I mean, I think firstly, we need to see less of an emphasis on capping legal routes. That creates problems of it in and of itself, because it creates a sort of cliff edge when people are not able to come because an arbitrary number has been reached. And obviously human displacement doesn't adhere to arbitrary numbers, unfortunately. But, it could be through making claims in other countries and then having resettlement. It could also be through, for example, having forms of visa that enable people to come to the UK. The Homes for Ukraine scheme, although they're not people who formally have refugee status, is a good example of this, where the UK used community impetus to create status for people to come and seek sanctuary. Now, there were problems with that scheme. For example, the fact that the time limits that were placed on people mean it's very difficult for people to formulate relationships, to access housing, to access employment, which again, by the way, puts costs back onto the state. So, part of my view on this is that we need to start to break down some of the simplistic thinking we've had under previous governments and start to look at actually how anti-migration measures increase the cost of migration, and that cost then comes to be used as a reason why further anti-migration measures should be introduced. So you get into this vicious cycle, and my worry with this proposal, again, for example, the reduction to 2.5-year terms, in the reduction or the increase to 20 years before you can receive permanent settlement. They are again sort of wrapped up in this idea of deterrence, but will actually create further costs for the state. But
it is fair, and the Ukraine scheme also said once Ukraine is safe, you will be required to go home. So that seems like a much fairer deal. That people, okay, while your country is at war, and you need sanctuary here, that's fine, but when it's safe to go back, you must go back. And surely that is what should happen, right? And some of the claims to a right to a family life doesn't necessarily mean they have a right to a family life here. That if their country is safe, then they must go back.
So, I mean, there's a bit of complexity, and I think the way we talk about refugee law, we need to be careful, because it's not necessarily a question of safe country in broad terms, but safe country for the particular person seeking asylum. So, for example, some countries will be safe for many people, but they may not be safe for all people. You know, to give you an example, Malaysia might generally be regarded as a safe country, but if you are a gay man living in a particular part of the country, you might find that you have a risk of persecution. So we need to keep in mind that the Refugee Convention and the protection of refugees is premised on risk to the individual. Now, the problem with the government's current proposal is sort of the way in which it's done, because what it does is it requires them on this proposal, it sort of means that every 2.5 years, the person who is seeking protection, who the UK has already recognised as a refugee, would be required to reapply. And that does create quite a lot of risks. It is already the case that when someone reaches 5 years, there is a review. It is just that the emphasis is on the Home Office to prove that their country of nationality is now safe. This would reverse that and half the duration. Now, the first thing to say about that is the Home Office almost certainly does not have capacity for this. They cannot keep up with first instant claims. That is what is partially creating the number of people staying in, for example, hotels and in other forms of accommodation. So introducing a massive increase in the number of claims that the Home Office has to process would not be good for the functioning of the system, but it also does have quite a serious detrimental effect on people seeking asylum. That sense of temporariness, particularly if you are, for example, in fear and you've been recognised as a refugee, can have quite serious mental health consequences, can restrict people's ability to feel safe in the UK because they are constantly on the clock. So whilst it is true that people, you know, if they're in a situation where there's been a fundamental change and it is safe for them to return, you could say that they, you know, that should happen.
Well, that is our obligation under refugee and law fulfilled. Our obligation is to protect, not for their entire lives, but for while their lives are in risk. And I do take your point about the individual. But just very quickly, Shabana also wants to limit the amount of appeals you can make. So you could just get one chance and then one appeal. That will shorten that list, presumably.
I mean, yes, in theory. We don't yet have a significant amount of detail on how that system will work. I think the paper was notably light on exact details of how that will operate. But, you know, I think the reality of the situation is that it would be more productive in terms of shortening that list for the Home Office to focus on improving the quality and number of first instance decisions it is making. Because the reality is that it's easy for the government to say, you know, there's a real problem, look at the number of appeals. But actually, quite a significant number of those appeals end up being successful because the quality of first instance decision making really is quite poor. And because of that, I think, you know, it's all well and good for the government to come up with these proposals, but actually they're not really getting the basics right at the moment. And if they were to focus on doing the basics, improving the quality of decision making at first instance, ensuring that people, there are safe and legal routes, quite a lot of the problems we are seeing would actually begin to be addressed. And I do have this horrible feeling that once again, and I said this about the previous government, we're seeing sort of a number of gimmicks intended to be a big showy announcement that really are not going to do very much. The reality is I don't think the 2.5 year change will reduce the number of people making journeys. It will, however, enact immense cruelty on people who are already here. I don't think that the 20-year change to settlement will reduce the number of people coming. It will enact significant cruelty. And that's not saying anything about the obligation of refugee law. The purpose there is safety, not settlement. But the reality is that when someone is here, part of that safety is feeling like you have a place in this country, and actually reducing to 2.5 years and constantly reviewing, it really does reduce the ability to formulate relations. And we need to remember that Article 34 of the Refugee Convention puts an obligation on states to support the naturalisation of people who have been granted asylum. So when you accept someone as a refugee, you are supposed to support their naturalisation and integration. Putting a 2.5 year clock on them does not do that.
Good to speak to you. No doubt we'll talk again. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Alex Powell there, Professor of Law at Warwick University and Specialist in UK Refugee Law. Well, joining me now is Lauren Starkey, who is a social worker who works with asylum-seeking children and young people. Lauren, Dr. Powell there talking about how, you know, a lot of these things are possibly just gimmicks and won't actually improve anything. But there will be a certain amount of fear, I imagine, with families that have settled here who are hearing that the whole family could be deported.
Absolutely, and I have spent the entirety of the past weekend on my phone constantly reassuring young people, teenagers, that, you know, hopefully these proposals won't apply to them, that they're not going to have their sense of safety stripped away from them. It's really quite barbaric, these proposals, and what they are doing to the sense of safety and stability and the mental health of these young people who, you know, have fled real horrors, you know, war-torn countries, persecution, trafficking, you know, really significant abuses in their home countries, and they've come here to try and find a sense of safety. And what is being thrown at them constantly is this idea that they are not welcome, they are not wanted, and that they are on the clock, as Alex said, until we decide it's time for them to go. And what I would really like in all of this, in all the discussion around it, in all the politics around it, is for everybody to just step back for 1 minute and imagine what these proposals feel like for the people who are going to be subject to them. Imagine what it's like if you have fled a country where you were abused, tortured, trafficked, subjected to all these kinds of abuses, and you come here and this country recognises that that is the truth, that that is what happened to you, that you were at risk and that you were harmed and that you do need protection. But every 2.5 years, you have to prove it again and again and again. And any moment, the government could decide that you've got to go back to that environment. Imagine what that is like. The teenagers, the young people I've been working with this weekend are utterly terrified.
But if their country of origin is no longer, it isn't deemed safe, they wouldn't be forced to go back to it. And there's a lot of people who will be listening right now who will be saying, well, look, you know, our obligation is to protect them when it is not safe in their home countries. As soon as it is deemed safe in their home countries, that is our obligation ended. And there are many people who are listening who are saying it doesn't mean for life to come here under a refugee or asylum status.
Well, Alex was also right to point out this idea of individualised risk. The Refugee Convention has never said that you have to be from a country that is at war. It specifically says that you personally have to be at risk of persecution. The concept of safety is very personal. As an example, I work with dozens of children and young people who have been trafficked from Albania. Now, the government has spent the last 3-4 years screeching at us about what a safe country Albania is, how beautiful it is, you know, the beaches, the tourism. But if you speak to children who grew up in Albania, who were abused and exploited by criminal gangs, where there was state complicity in their trafficking, they will tell you it doesn't matter how safe the government says the country is. For me, it is not. And that is what they're saying to us. And if you imagine being from a country where your neighbours may have been complicit in the types of crimes that your government committed against you, being told, yes, well, overall there's been a change in government and your country is safe now, doesn't change the fact that that person will never be able to feel safe there.
But there are many children in this country subject to the same criminality.
Absolutely. And the chronic underfunding of services that we have seen in this country over the past 15 years under austerity has had a terrible impact on children from all walks of life, whether that's refugee children or British national-born children. But that is not the fault of refugees and asylum seekers.
But wouldn't there be more money in the system if those teenagers weren't dependent on the state to look after them, if they could go home to Albania?
Well, the problem that we've got is that the government implemented 15 years of austerity, that there has been a chronic underfunding of public services. You know, I've worked in youth services for years. Youth centres don't exist anymore because nobody is funding them. You know, it wasn't asylum seekers and refugees, for example, who introduced the right to buy scheme that decimated council housing stock. Refugees and asylum seekers didn't implement austerity, which has stripped public services to the bone. But what is happening is that private companies are profiteering off of these systems. The amount of profiteering in children's social care is out of control. The profiteering on asylum hotels is out of control. There are political decisions that could be made that would funnel more money where it's needed. You could allow asylum seekers to work. You could allow them to integrate into communities. You could allow them to stop being so dependent on asylum support. But what these new policies do is the exact opposite. Because if you tell people that their status is temporary and has to be reviewed every 2.5 years, you are making it harder for them to find long-term employment, long-term housing. You are likely to make them more dependent on state support, not less. You are creating a larger financial responsibility, not a lower one.
Good to talk to you, Lauren. Much of what you say I completely agree with. Lauren Starkey there, social worker, works with asylum-seeking children and young people. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and coming up at midnight, of course, it is your chance to talk back. So we're going to be talking about these new asylum policies. Do you think that she is onto something? Is this too little, too late? Do you trust the Labour government to actually follow it through? Do give me a call, 03444 99 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, and you can text the word TALK and your messages to 872. 222. Now, though, we're giving you and a mate the chance to win the ultimate trip of a lifetime to Las Vegas. Your journey kicks off in style with exclusive lounge access at Heathrow, followed by an upper-class comfort flight with lie flat beds. I've never been able to do that. And top tier service all the way to Vegas. When you land, you'll check into a luxurious spa villa for 4 nights. Cheer from the stands as Las Vegas Raiders take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're throwing in $5,000 worth of cash to enjoy while you're there. So clear your calendar, January 2nd to the 7th, 26, because this could be the best start to your new year ever. Good luck, and here's how to enter.
21 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text at £2 plus standard network rate. Bill payer's permission required. Or call 03434239761. Calls are charged at standard rate. All entries must be received by the 28th of November at 4 p.m. This is a network promotion run across TalkSport, Virgin Radio UK and Talk. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, you're with Talk and you're with Petrie. And there can be few things in this world, I think, that are more disgusting and pathetic than somebody pretending to have medals, pretending to have fought in a war, or pretending that they were in the services for longer than they actually were and did more things than they actually did. It steals from those who actually have given up family time, given up everything to defend this country. Well, there's a growing lobby of former service personnel calling for a new law aimed at punishing fantasists who falsely claim to be veterans and wear medals that they didn't earn. They believe that so-called stolen valour offences should be made a criminal matter, as it is in America. Now, it's already an offence under the Uniform Act to wear a uniform without the King's permission, unless performing on a stage. The Walter Mitty Hunters Club, an anonymous group of veterans with contacts across the armed forces, was set up to find and expose those fraudsters known as WALTs. They now receive 30 tip-offs a week of these people pretending. It follows the arrest of a man attending remembrance events in Wales with alleged faked medals and wearing a full naval uniform. Well, joining me to discuss this is Simon Diggins, retired British colonel and host of the Sun's Superpowers Exposed series. It's really good to talk to you, Simon. I find this really despicable. I don't know about you.
Petrie, good evening to you. I also find it very sad. I think the reason I find it particularly sad is it takes away from what people were trying to do on Remembrance Day, which was think about what happened in the past, the service and sacrifice of my forebears, and very quickly the attention went from that to trying to find out who this individual was and what he did or had not done. And I think that's the real sadness about what he's done. I mean, people passing themselves off, I think, have their people are concerned to be rather sad rather necessarily bad. But when you're trying to do something like Remembrance, which is one of the more sort of formal occasions of the year, then to actually do it there, I think is particularly despicable.
I mean, in the US, it is a federal crime. They changed the law in 2013 to say, look, stealing valour is more than just pretending to be a war hero. It is stealing from, like I said in my introduction, it's stealing from men like you who gave up, months at a time, years at a time of family life, of normal life to protect this country. It steals from those people who were injured doing their duty. It steals from the families that waited back behind for loved ones. And I've been in that position with an ex of mine, waiting for them to return, the months and the endless months of being without somebody. It steals from all of those different things. And as you said, they might be sad rather than bad, but still that is, for me, that's theft, that's stealing.
Yeah, and I think we need to have some law that protects us. I understand that we did have one. And then sort of tidying up of various army disciplinary arrangements in 2005, 2006, the offence was removed. A later attempt in 2016 to bring something through Parliament fell eventually on the back of the 2017 general election. So I think there is a kind of sense where this is something we did have properly in place. It wouldn't take very much. I'm sure it would get very good cross-party, cross-country support, and we can get a law back in place perhaps even for next year. So next year's Remembrance Parade is not known for not the what it should be remembered for, and not some individual who decides to abuse, if you like, the history and valour of all those who have actually served.
I mean, like you said, to do it on the Remembrance Day, where it is literally about knowing that you've been in the shoes of these men and women that gave everything to this country, knowing that you partook in that you were as prepared as they were to lay down the ultimate sacrifice. It's not about pretending to have done any of that. I mean, no. It just defies logic to me. There are offences, of course, where people pretend that they were ex-military in order to gain sponsorship or funding for something, and that is against the law. That's a fraud. But you think there absolutely should be the specific crime of stolen valour?
Yes, we used to have something like that. I mean, it was not a crime I particularly come across, but a bit of research showed that crime did exist. And it seems to me that having read those provisions now, thanks to your producer, they seem to me to be perfectly reasonable. And it shouldn't take very much for them to be brought back in across the services and just make it very, very clear. And help the police, for goodness sake, as to what they do and what they don't do. So they've got a very clear understanding. The guy has got no right to those medals. Then there's a criminal offence, and then he is dealt with accordingly. And I think that would help everybody. And please get us beyond this. So, we can think about, are we really looking after our veterans? Are we really looking after our veterans' families? Are we really looking after our servicemen? Which is the whole purpose of remembrance, and not to worry about an individual who clearly, I suspect, is mentally ill, who is doing something like that, and bringing attention down on himself and forcing us to reconsider whether we're doing these things right or not.
Yeah, and playing dress up. While I've got you, Simon, and I didn't actually tell our producer that I was going to ask you this. Just the British aircraft carrier, I know you'll be across it, that has now fallen under NATO control or command. What does that mean?
What it means is that we, from time to time, we have our own aircraft carriers, we have our own ships who are working directly under British control. What it also means from time to time, we assign them to NATO. So NATO has various tasks around the world, particularly the sort of North Atlantic, the Baltic area, what they call the High North up into the Arctic, and there may be other NATO mission areas that we're operating as well. And we have assigned that force, in this case, the aircraft carrier, presumably with an air group embarked, to support that NATO mission. It's a very normal and straightforward piece of kind of operational movement. We do it with Army units, we do it with Air Force units. So they are assigned then to a NATO command for the duration of a particular NATO mission. Their formal command status doesn't change. They always remain British assets, but for a period of time, they're assigned to NATO for a particular NATO operation or training.
But does that mean that we don't command it now? That the British commander in charge of that is not in command?
No. I mean, so the captain will still be the captain,
right.
But the exercising authority, or the training or operational commander, will be a NATO commander who might happen also to be British, but he just happens that, but he might not be. But we do that regularly. It happens to other foreign nations as well. They work directly for us when we're operating in NATO headquarters. I worked in NATO headquarters for 3 years in the Ace Rapid Reaction Corps, and we had German units under command, we had French units, we had Dutch units under command, and they were assigned by their sending nation to us for a particular phase of operations or exercises, and then at the end of the day, and at the end of the exercise or training or operational deployment, they'd then be returned to their own nation for their own national purposes.
That clears that up. And the other thing I just wanted to pick your brains about, just before I let you go, because I found this incredibly shocking, and that is the civilian shooters or hunters in Sarajevo. Have you been reading this story?
No, I haven't, I'm afraid. No.
Okay, well, in that case, there's a story going around that that during the Bosnian conflict in Sarajevo, that there were civilian snipers paying to go in and shoot others. Human safari, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's extraordinary.
Maybe we'll talk about that another time. I mean, it just is the most shocking thing to me that I read. Having stayed in Hotel Sarajevo and being right next door to Sniper Alley, to think that they were doing it for fun,
for their pleasure or for their gigs. I hope we can identify them, because that's basic murder.
It is.
I hope we can find them and they can be punished according to law.
Just disgusting. If it is true, then it is beyond anything that I've ever really heard about. Simon, thank you. Brilliant to talk to you as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Don't forget to watch Simon's series, the Sun's Superpowers Exposed series. It is really very, very good. That's Colonel Simon Diggins there. Right, quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and I'm with you until 1 o'clock. Now, coming up in a bit is Amy Fisher. She's going to be here to go through the newspapers. Always a pleasure to see her. She's a very sensible woman as well. But first of all, let's turn our attention to what is going on with the Epstein files. Now, normally, of course, foreign stories don't really filter through to the British thinking, but we have the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, who will be heavily implicated in these files. We've already seen some of the files, so it is across the pond story. But now Donald Trump, the US president, after trying to stop these files coming out, has urged Republican lawmakers to vote to release them. So why the about turn? Let's talk now to Ethan Behrman, attorney and adjunct professor at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. Ethan, good to speak to you again. It's been a while. We can't hear you. Have you got your microphone? Are you on mute? Or is that us? Oh no. Can we check and see if you can...
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Got you, Ethan.
Okay,
got you.
so sorry.
That's all right. I don't know whose fault that was, but we've got you eventually. That's all that matters. Ethan, why the U-turn? This is extraordinary. I mean, I know we're not used to knowing where we are with Donald Trump, but day from day, this is, just release. That's fine.
Well, I mean, this is part and parcel of President Trump's strategy dating back to his first term. You never really know what's going to come out of his mouth, because remember, during the presidential campaign, he said that he wanted to release the Epstein files, and then all of a sudden he was very much against it and fighting tooth and nail for months for this to be held up in Congress. And by the way, I just want to point out that he has the power at any time to declassify and release these documents. He can do it. He doesn't need Congress to do it. And so I think he realized he was losing this battle badly, and his base was turning against him on this topic. So it's time to just throw out, hey, go ahead and release them, but never take responsibility for them.
So there's more risk to him in not... He must have made this this balance, this sum. There's more risk to him not doing it than he believes there is in doing it. So he must be pretty confident that either he's not in the files in the way that people suspect he might be, or he's been able to somehow redact those files and make sure that they don't get seen. One of those has got to be true, right?
Absolutely, you nailed it completely. But we already saw from at least one email that was released last week of the roughly 20,000 emails that were released, that there was one email in particular that talked about, and whether it's true or not, I cannot verify, but mentioned Putin having a photograph of President Trump. And that was pretty, if I may use the word, damning on its own, because in particular, we've seen behavior from our sitting president that would be indicative of preferential treatment or views toward Vladimir Putin in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, this is the compromat that everybody was talking about. But this photograph, if it's the same one that I've heard about, yeah, it is. It is. I mean, if that were to ever see the light of day, that would be the end of Donald Trump. So the only way I'm thinking, again, you're the lawyer, is that if Donald Trump were to mount, or the DOJ were to mount investigations into certain people like Bill Clinton, for example, then they could reasonably say that they can't release any of those images or files because it's pertinent to an ongoing law case. Is that right?
Yes, and when the Republicans point out that the Democrats didn't do something with these Epstein files when it was President Biden in office. That was a big part of it, is the Ghislaine Maxwell case was being prosecuted. And so while there's an active case, we don't want to release certain materials. At this point, Ghislaine Maxwell has allegedly been moved off to a rather easygoing federal prison, shall we call it, where she might be receiving preferential treatment after talking to President Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche. But right now, that would be the best way, if Donald Trump were to stymie this, would be to have his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, kick off some investigation into these Democrats. By the way, most Americans, I just want to make this perfectly clear, most Americans, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, want everybody to be held accountable.
Of course. Who is
in these files. It's not a partisan topic. We want people in jail, in prison, whatever they're, if they are guilty, like you said, the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, we want everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the world does, actually, and this has been going on for so long. So I mean, again, I may be being cynical and I may be being unfair, but this about face, after Donald Trump did put out on Truth Social asking Pam Bondi and the DOJ to start to prosecute Democrats that are on this list, could be why he's suddenly changed his mind and said release. Because if it's anything, if he's linked with Bill Clinton, which, by the way, wouldn't have been an illegal act if what happened, right? It's not illegal for two men to like each other. So, that wouldn't be illegal, but it would certainly finish off Donald Trump's image, presumably, if it were to be proven true. But if there was an investigation into Bill Clinton, those things would be withheld from public scrutiny, right?
Yes, it would. And again, you're not being cynical, Petrie. I mean, I think that because what we have seen, particularly in these first 10 months roughly of his second term, we have seen very aggressive action, even more partisan than in his first term. It's just naked partisanship to protect himself, to call out and just investigate Democrats. We know that this is not a partisan issue. There are people across the political spectrum who are named in these files. And so that would be one way for him to try and cover himself.
Yeah.
Pun, I guess, intended in that case. But here it really is dangerous territory for the United States, and it has ramifications for the whole world, as you mentioned absolutely correctly, Petrie.
Yeah, I mean, because these girls were trafficked across state lines, across country lines, I mean, this into the UK, who knows where else, right? That these perverts were having their fun with these girls. So it is it is a global issue. It certainly should be exposed to the world.
Can I just point out, Petrie, yeah. You talk about, you just mentioned really quickly about these girls and the cross-border movement. In the United States, at least, a man engaging in these acts with an underage girl, which in the United States is under 18, that is rape.
Yeah.
Under the law here. There's no getting around it. There's no playing games with that definition. This is a very serious issue. And I apologize for interrupting.
No. I mean, it is a serious issue, because a lot of people will be saying that it's, they were 17 years old or 16 years old. But like you said, in the US, that is not the age of consent. Plus, they were trafficked. Plus, there's the whole slavery thing as well that we need to know about. And as you said, it shouldn't be partisan. Everybody needs to know who all of those men, and if there were women too, were. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, obviously, there will now be a vote, and it will be overwhelmingly to release the files that they can release. Are we going to start hearing, yes, but there are certain things we can't release, and we can't do this because of ongoing investigations? So, in other words, it's pretty pointless in a way.
Well, we actually have a much bigger procedural issue here in the United States. So the House of Representatives which I guess is somewhat similar to the House of Commons, is who has the bill right now. And then it has to get voted on by the United States Senate, which are, again, very loosely similar to the House of Lords. And they show no interest in getting involved in this. If the Senate does not take up this bill and does not vote for it, it will have been passed and then died coming out of the House of Representatives. And that's why I think it's so important to point out that I hear very few people discussing President Trump at any time has the power to release these files. It doesn't require Congress. He can do it if he actually believed what he's saying.
And even if the Senate, let's say the Senate does pass it after Donald Trump saying, yeah, be damned, release the files, he could still squash it on his desk, couldn't he? He can still.
Absolutely.
He has veto on this completely. He could just go, no, sorry, I'm not signing that.
And I don't think he would go that far. I think he would be much more creative in the ways that you've been describing. Again, I know you called yourself cynical. I don't think it's cynical in light of what we've seen. I would suggest that we would get caught up in all kinds of arguments. If we can't release this one, we can't release that one.
Yeah.
And then the public is going to be extraordinarily suspicious because who's reviewing it?
Ethan, I can't wait. I mean, I'm just bated breath over here. It's lovely to talk to you again. Thank you so much. The papers are next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie with you until 1 o'clock. Don't forget, they've got Talk Back coming up at midnight, which is your chance to literally do that, to talk back. And we're going to be talking about the new illegal migrant decisions that are being made, the policies that are being made by our Home Secretary. So we'll be talking about that and whether you think it'll actually ever do anything or whether it's actually the policies are any good. I mean, we're still debating that at this stage. Well, joining me now to go through the papers is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms at the Conservative Party.
Hello there.
Who I described as being quite sane.
I was absolutely delighted by, and I'm going to get a way more techie friend than me to somehow clip that and maybe turn it into some sort of ringtone for me.
Ringtone, that would be
I think
excellent.
that would just really sort of wind, you know, sort of what in the early 2000s people started to get these like niche ringtones, like the A-Team, like the James Bond theme tune. Everyone thought it would be very jazzy. I think to have one saying Amy Fisher, she's quite sane,
that
as my own
excellent.
phone ringtone would be so narcissistically irritating for everyone around me. I'm quite taken with that plan.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very
very nice to see you again.
Very nice to see you too. Let's turn our attention to the Sun, and unsurprisingly, I did suspect that you know, the whole asylum shake-up would be on every page, and indeed, I believe it is. So the Sun says maths tutor plus on-call GPs plus over 3k to go. It just doesn't add up. Fury at perks for illegal migrants. Somebody's looked through this and done the trying to do the maths, although the policies themselves are very thin.
Yes, so whilst the issue of the Home Secretary's statement yesterday afternoon about exactly a sort of crackdown blitz on asylum and immigration and sort of border policy is universal on every single front page. There's barely anything else. There's sort of only the FT, which we might come to, that's a bit of an outlier. The Sun has got actually a very, this is quite a different slant on it, with their sort of further, they've got 2 pages, 4 and 5 on the inside about it, because universally all of the other papers are sort of talking about it at quite a high level, as in this is a really big break, this is the biggest overhaul of the system since the Second World War. There is lots of debate on either side as to the politics of it. You know, is this just the Labour Party trying to outflank the threat from reform by going really hard? You know, the Conservatives seem a little unsure actually where they're falling down on it, as in you kind of feel like they sort of should be a lot in favour of it, but they can't quite bring themselves to say it, so they're trying to say something different, but they're not quite sure what it is different that they're saying. Then within the Labour Party itself, this policy document has sparked an enormous amount of debate about, you know, yes, they know that probably along with the NHS, the failure to sort of crack down on small boats and the problem that certainly illegal immigration and other related legal aspects of immigration and asylum are causing them the biggest headache, alongside, as I say, the NHS, against actually a relatively significant, it's still smallish at the moment, but a relatively significant part of the Labour Party that are desperately upset at some of the stuff in here, which is, and you know, I as a former Conservative, you know, when I sort of heard it, I didn't, even before the Home Secretary had stood up to speak around tea time, the actual sort of policy document had been printed online. And I have to admit, as I was skimming through it, even I was like, wow, there's some stuff in there that is pretty harsh stuff about, you know, automatically removing families, and there's some other things in the detail that I dare say we'll get to. But my point about saying the dissent within the Labour Party itself, we're not talking about the far or even soft left. We're talking about some really relatively middling people, you know, people like Stella Creasy, you know, who's a very sort of centrist individual. She was certainly out on the, you know, airwaves at tea time, clearly quite unhappy about a lot of this. So that's the general big picture. Then, in all of that kind of massive debate, the Sun here has really, it seemed, kind of devilled into some sort of detail about it, exactly still sort of what perks or preferential treatment some people who may legally or illegally be getting, and that's their particular take on this sort of massive row which has been rumbling on since, you know, a lot of this stuff was first being briefed on Sunday.
But is it possible that you know, she's actually playing quite a clever game here, in that you first of all you put out these extreme policies, and some of them are, just to give the backbenchers something when she says, okay, well, we'll soften that a little bit, or we'll deal, so that the backbenchers think that they're getting something when they're actually not.
Yes, and then the corollary, I totally agree, and the corollary is also that actually if the, sort of general public through the airwaves hear that, oh, the Labour government is talking about doing some pretty tough things, then some of the mood music gets out there that, oh, they are listening to us, we are, the public are worried about the small boats, possibly those reform voters. So you're right, it's a two-prong...
It's a dog whistle
It's a sort of dog whistle in both directions, actually, almost if you like. But two things I'd say about that is, I don't think the Labour government has shown themselves to be particularly good at dog whistling and kite flying over the last few weeks about the budget, right?
No.
This does not seem to be within their strategic communications barrel of successful ammunition. Far from being successful ammunition, it's turned into a big, basically, circle assault party, right? Yeah. Literally, as with the row we saw blow up, about a week ago between Bread's Streeting and Number 10 and all of that. So, from a purely strategic communications point, that would be quite an interesting tactic to be trying on such a major issue, which, as I say, is one of your top ones, as border security and migration. So that would be interesting, and that's what they've gone for. But actually, returning to this Sunfront page within the wider issue of it all, it seems the Sunfront page seems to be saying this is an investigation that they've done into existing cases. So it's actually less about being promised, what's the phrase, being promised bread and honey tomorrow. Yeah. And the Sun is actually saying, well, how are we going to trust you on any of that when for the last, 16, 17 months, the problem, certainly in terms of small boats, has not, and migrant hotels and all these other things that we've had the summer of unrest has not only gotten worse, but when we, the Sun, have really dug into it with our 2-page expose on the inside, there's even more unfair bits than we even knew about, referenced here, the mass tutors or the on-call GPs, which certainly, on the basis, I say, of what the Sun has splashed with, does sound a bit odd, because that is far beyond the sort of experience that most people
have.
Most people don't have an on-call GP, right?
Well, so most people can't get to see a GP.
So I think that's point is, as the government vows a blitz, it just doesn't add up. As in, come on, you've got no control over the situation at the moment. How are you expecting any of us to believe, with your sort of 33-point policy document that you've promised today, is suddenly going to be the silver bullet? So I think the Sun's angle on that is quite interesting, that they clearly made an editorial choice, and they would have been doing this investigation for some time, and so it does.
So how can we trust you on what you're saying when what you're doing?
When your history, when
different.
Actually we can only judge you on your past, and the past history, is sort of showing all of this, and so sort of editorially amongst all of the rest of the papers, their angle is quite significantly different in really going on that. Well, we've got your past history. You're saying the system is bonkers and broken, which is essentially what the Home Secretary has been saying for the last 2 days. She has said it's not fit for purpose, it was made for a different time, and so the Sun is asking a legitimate question of like, well, right, fine, but this is how broken it is, and you don't seem to want to be talking about that. You're just promising us that somehow the sunny uplands are just over here. Jam tomorrow. Not honey, you're absolutely right. I knew it was some sort of...
If you're posh.
I knew it was some sort of spreadable condiment.
The thing is, though, that she is the new Home Secretary. So maybe she is coming at this in a different way. And also her family were migrants. So she may be... The accusation, for example, that she is being racist, it is easier for her to bat that away, given that her family were immigrants.
Oh, and she used some pretty strong language about that, which is kind of about, she's literally...
Same as Petrie Patel did the same sort of thing.
She's had the personal experience of, being called a effing... we need to go get it, but, she sort of... And I... Not only do I doubt that's true, I get that is pretty powerful, because I've never had that experience.
Yeah, quite.
With maybe the exception of Petrie Patel or indeed Sajid Javid, there haven't been very many Home Secretaries who have had a colour of skin, which means that they they do things in situations with the best one in the world, the likes of somebody like me. I won't understand the undercurrents.
Of course,
I will see direct insults like being called the effing P word, but there will be things in that I won't ever have seen. So for that, I do think that puts her in quite a uniquely strong position.
I do too.
However, I'm not sure this has landed quite as they would have
But it didn't
wanted.
in Denmark. I mean, if you look at the struggle, because the interesting thing about the Denmark plan and even the Spanish plan, although they're very different, it is left-leaning parties that are trying to bring in sort of harsher and very different schemes over migration. So but they still managed to push through, and in some cases much harsher. I think
Denmark is
because they're talking about
harsher.
taking jewellery away from people to pay for towards their asylum care. I think that one has been dropped
out. Absolutely.
Mahmood, and that's what I mean is that often you attempt to go. It's like I used to do when I was a reporter, right? Don't tell anybody. But I used to put stuff into my reports that I knew that my editor would take out, that I didn't want in there in the first place, because he always had to interfere. And so I'd write stuff that I knew he'd go, well, that's unnecessary, and I go, oh, thank you, sir, and take it. And I wonder, and I'd walk away happy, and he was happy because he felt he'd changed something.
Everybody gets from a bit of the interaction.
So I just wonder if that could be what she's. I mean, as you said, it's not really been in their wheelhouse to be that smart. But
I come back to my point that I think this is too big an issue and too far to risk. And too far beyond their wheelhouse of competence, and that's actually not me being particularly me. I mean, this would just be an enormous subject with all the subtleties, moral, ethical, let alone the political, practical, financial ones. This would be too big an issue to be trying to play that sort of subtlety of hand with.
It was interesting. So I was talking to a lawyer earlier in the programme about this, and he just said, look, the unintended consequences of all of these, things that she's putting forward is that it will cost the British taxpayer more, because they're going to need to employ more people, to see people every 2.5 years. We've got overwhelming numbers.
Those people who
won't
won't be able to work because no one knows how to employ them, how they get back. This is what I mean about this is too big a deal with too many moving spokes of even leaving aside the moral and ethical bits of it, even leaving aside the politics of it. The actual financial practicality, legal frameworky, governance, legal framework being obviously the technical term of it, but the governance of it, just the enormity of the moving parts in it. I just don't think this is something that you can slightly put out there on the fly with the hope of, maybe we'll rail it back a little bit and we'll tweak it here. We're not talking about tweaks. These are sort of fundamentally.
Well, and it's going to cost us millions in legal pushback as well. Judges.
Well, and also, as far as I can make out, they haven't actually, sort of done the actual. Every government policy basically has to have a cost policy analysis thing to it.
They haven't done that.
There was no sight nor sniff. There's no sort of, and by the way, a more detailed version of this is coming in 3 months. It's just sort of, here's this policy document, and that alone has had so many hairs running, let alone, and also, those cost policy analysis documents are always so terrifying in and of themselves, because the nature of them is they have to give a scale of horror between, end of the world and, we might just get slightly sunburnt from the fires of hell. And with something as huge as this, we have no...
It would take years, wouldn't it?
It would take years.
To figure out if it's even gonna work. I mean,
but then another part of me, and I actually don't mean this comment in the specificality of each of the proposals, because some of the proposals I was genuinely taken, even as a conservative, I go, oh wow, that was going a bit far. But I guess some credit does have to be given that this has been a weeping sore of a policy area since anything to do with Rwanda, and again, I certainly am not making an argument here that I thought Rwanda would have worked, but I am saying Rwanda was there as a thing that hadn't actually really been tried because it was cancelled, you know, sort of within 2 weeks of when it was meant to be getting going, obviously after the general election. Maybe there is a bit of credit to be given that something is being done, which is a markedly different approach from just a sense of, oh goodness, it's all getting worse, smash the gangs. Like, if we come up with a 3-word slogan and keep repeating it enough and talk about maybe having a crackdown on TikTok, then people are going to think we're solving the problem. So, as I said, I don't want to be churlish about this. There has been clearly significant steps forward in some thinking. Whether that was in the right either political or strategic direction, I guess we're going to see over the next few days as more of this is...
What's going to be interesting is when she announces, apparently later on this week, about safe and legal routes.
Yes.
And once that there are safe and legal routes, you can then declare people coming over on boats as being illegal.
Oh, and you can then start to mess around with things like modern slavery, because that was one of the bits when I read it, I was like, oh wow, really, modern slavery? We're going to start trying to unpick really what is not a very old bit of legislation, which is groundbreaking at its time for attacking a problem that people had never really got. That genuinely was one of the ones where I went, oh, I'm not sure we quite want to be chucking the baby out with the bathwater on that one. I mean, if we want to go down the route of sort of it's not even a conspiracy. You know, this to me is you know, at least part and parcel of this is the whole dead cat. We're 9 days out from what is going to be undoubtedly an horrific budget. So, I mean, is it that surprising that sort of after the tumultuous time that they've had of the quote hokey-cokey budget, which everyone, or the budget to be that everyone's now calling it, you know, I'm not really surprised they wheeled out a huge dead cat and kind of going, right guys, talk about that for the next week whilst we actually do sort out what we're going to do with the OBR budget forecast and income tax.
You could be right about that. God, we're cynical old birds. Right, let's take a quick break, but Amy and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me, Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservatives, and we're looking at the Times now. Nearly half of all Labour voters want Starmer out by the next election. I think they might get their wish.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of I'm not that surprised by the headline. I mean,
is it only half though?
I mean, legit question. But I mean, you don't have to think that hard. You know, of the last 16, 17 months that Starmer has been PM. I mean, not only has it not been a great success, I mean, how many resets have they had? I'm counting at least 3. How many U-turns have they had?
Oh,
I'm
God,
counting at least 4. Like, 2-child benefit cap, welfare, winter fuel, get this budget that we've already mentioned of which particular pledge are we going to be breaking on the income tax or national insurance. I mean, and again, and that's been the policy sort of mess-ups. Then there have been the communications ones. So very early on, the stuff about taking the freebies and the concerts and the thousands of pounds worth of clothes. Then there's kind of been the people one, like Tulip Sadiq, the anti-fraud minister having to resign, Louise Hay having to resign because did she not misplace her BlackBerry or whatever it was?
Was it stolen?
And Angela Rayner. I mean, it's not just one bit. It's not just kind of one bit of policy. We've just been talking about the Home Office and immigration and asylum, and the Home Office is always the thorn in anyone's side. But it's not just that. It's any of these other things which I literally didn't have to think very hard to list. And I'm sure, as I said, every single one of them. A lot of your listeners would have been going, yes, remember that?
Yeah.
I do remember
that one.
Oh God, and was that only a year ago? So we're not talking about like me as a sort of slight political geek pulling things out of the annals of time. We're talking about very, very recent, very bad things that have all happened to this sort of, well, not happened to, because some of them are at least half his responsibility. Well, no, they're actually all evidently his responsibility at the end of the day because he's PM. But some of it has quite literally been of his own making, like the one last week where Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer's, like, that's his particular
buddy,
personal point, body man, whatever you want to call it. It's like self-created. I was trying to remember when I'd last literally seen, number 10 so willingly get, a double-barrel shotgun and take him to its own both feet, right?
I know.
Because there's this argument that came out of literally nowhere with
that nobody was
West
having.
Street. Like, no one was having it. They literally had to cross an empty car park to find somebody to argue with, to create 3 terrible days worth of, is number 10 a toxic environment? Has this Morgan McSweeney gone rogue? Is he acting with the PM's agreement? And if he isn't, well, then he is rogue, and so he shouldn't be doing it. Because at the meantime, he started this argument with a member of the cabinet who, West Streeting, by his own admission, is very ambitious. I think it was on a quiz show about 10 years ago as a new MP. He was asked to nominate which of his colleagues he could see as being PM in 10 years' time, and he literally said, well, me.
Yeah.
But I mean, but
he's definitely been on manoeuvres as well. But
that's sort of fine. But he's never particularly hidden it. But I don't believe in this case that he did actually have, 50 signatures or whatever.
Not like Angela Rayner is doing.
Well, not like Angela Rayner is doing. So this was the thing. I don't think Wes Treating had been particularly shy about the fact that he is a very ambitious chap. But in this scenario, I think he was genuinely baffled when he was being told that he was organising like an imminent coup, to take over, whether even the rules, which, by the way, he helped write for Labour Party leadership contests, that he was about to immediately sort of be rolling the metaphorical tanks down number 10. I mean, as I say, like, some of this stuff has been, comms problems, some of it's just been really bad policy, and some of it has just been, like, bafflingly bad. What, did you all just have too many gin and tonics last night?
I mean, it's extraordinary. We were promised, weren't we, a different type of politics, and yet here we are with the same. So, on the front page of the Mirror, Keir Starmer says, I will lead Labour at the next election.
Yeah.
Will he now? Keir Starmer has come out fighting to insist. There's nothing more depressing than somebody insisting
having
something.
To say it.
You're having to say it.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm a really good person.
Yeah, exactly.
If you have to say it, you're probably not.
So there's that, exactly. So as soon as you have to say, oh no, I know I'm fine, I know I'm doing a really good job. I mean, you've sort of lost the argument. But there's also this is just a very strange communications decision to, for a Tuesday.
He shouldn't have to do this.
Sort of not being funny, but a slightly random Tuesday in the run-up to the budget, be giving like the sole standalone interview to one paper, because it's not even like in the run-up to the budget leaving aside any leaking stuff, but like in the run-up to big set-piece events, as you and your listeners will well know, whether it's the budget or sort of party conference or any of, Christmas when it's quiet, there's more space, you sort of, as your common strategy, you sort of parcel out bits to different bits of the media, so that everybody gets a bit of a story. And if you've got a big story to tell, which by the way they have with these biggest changes to the immigration and the border system since World War II, why have we got the Prime Minister, I mean really somewhat randomly, I'm not using that word flippantly, but really somewhat randomly popping up, having done this standalone interview with the Mirror, which have obviously gone with the line of I'll lead Labour at the next election, which anybody just looks at and goes, well, isn't that really weird? Because wasn't that a row you were having with your own party in a borderline empty room about 4 days ago, when actually now, if you're going to give a set-piece interview...
It should be on the Home Secretary's migration plans.
Migration plans, the single bit of policy
he backs them, and
and it may be, it may be very difficult, and I know some people might be upset with them, but this is how I believe it's the right thing to do, because I know it affects so many people's lives, and this is an issue that is the top of people's lists. Maybe even like showing a bit of metaphorical, leg on, and I know people are also still worried about cost of living, but this of all weeks, I want you to let you know that I'm the guy out there fighting for you. No, we've got a bit of navel gazing.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I just talking about himself and pushing himself forward, it is at a very strange time to do that. And like I said, there's nothing more depressing than somebody who says, I'm great.
Yeah.
Because if you have to say that, you're
it's
clearly
the surest
struggling
sign,
with it.
exactly. It's the surest sign that things might be otherwise. So,
and that is just a message to his Labour colleagues. That's not a message to us.
Which again is so self.
That's not to us.
It's
is
so
it?
self-indulgent. Look, actually, I'm going to be fair, because he does sort of talk about then, the sort of second bullet point is promising Labour values and pledges on breakfast clubs, I guess, for kids, and prescription charges to ease worries. But still, you don't set up an interview with like that.
No.
And you would have discussed, with the political editor, Lizzie Buchanan, you would have laid the ground beforehand about what each of you is wanting to get out of that interview. So the fact that this has ended up as the splash, that was what they wanted to get out of it, albeit whilst perhaps touching on some other things. I say very strange to me. That would have been.
And he also knows that the budget's going to be a car crash, and says things like, I remain focused on what matters, which is bearing down on the cost of living. In the week that we know next week is going to be very tough for all of us.
It's horrible.
It's going to be really, really bad. Right, we're going to take a quick break, but Amy and I will be back just shortly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Tory party. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. Racist abuse that means I know broken asylum system must be fixed. This is the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, hit back at critics of her asylum reforms last night as she revealed she suffers racist abuse in the street. And this is going to be her superpower through this, isn't it? Is her origin story.
Completely agree. As we were sort of just saying, it does give her a unique position that she
silences other people in the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the Mail's quite interesting how they appear to have just covered this quite straight on the basis of the front page that we can see. It will be quite interesting today to see sort of where they've found bits that they agree with in it, and where they still maybe have some concerns or are less convinced. This is where I sort of say, as I mentioned earlier, the Conservatives are in such a strange position. So Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, seemed to be saying, and so a couple of bits in this I didn't seem to understand, his response to all of this seems to be saying, well, of course we will support it where it seems to be making small steps. Now, I don't think you or I thinking that much of this is particularly small is actually pretty seismic. So that was one sort of, oh, interesting, Chris, wonder what you mean by small. And then as he's sort of gone on to explain his position, actually he's kept back circling around to where any of the ECHR and all of that kind of legal framework will still sit within it. So I'm wondering whether the Daily Mail will be in the same place in further editorial bits on the inside of the pages. That yes, as it seems to me, on the base of this front page, it seems pretty, well, actually, okay, look, Home Secretary, yeah, we get your point. We also agree that the asylum system is broken. Now let's have a look at what you said. As I say, it will then be interesting to see how far in maybe editorials they are looking at the legal framework related to the ECJ and the ECHR, and that might be where this particular paper,
particularly Article 8 and Article 3, wasn't it? They wanted
exactly.
to give the right to a family life. They're going to instruct judges, from what I've read, to not put the rights of a family life above the rights of
So they've talked about a consolidated legal process, which seems to suggest you can't have these kind of endless appeals, or actually
there'll be one appeal.
There'll be one appeal, and actually there might be a slightly higher bar as to where you can appeal in the first place. As I say, the Conservatives have come up with that, saying, well, that's not quite far enough, we need to withdraw from the whole framework. So that's what I mean about where...
But the article of human rights is so thin, and that's where the abuses come through. You can write it on the back of a fag packet, which is what I always say, and people don't realise it's a tiny little document. It really is. And that's where the abuses come in, because there's plenty of opportunity for individualising this thing.
And if you've frankly got legal firms that are willing to work around those edges, which, as I know from working in the Home Office, there is a cottage industry of...
Absolutely.
There's a cottage industry of law firms who
interpret this.
Yeah.
It's open to interpretation. That's the problem.
It's even more specific than that. There are, I obviously can't say because I get in a lot of trouble, but there are literally, there is a law firm that if you're perhaps from Uganda and you may not have previously had homosexual feelings, but you wish to stay here, this particular law firm will advise you that if you suddenly have realised that that is your sexual orientation, they can certainly help you with your appeal.
Right.
It's that specific.
But how can you legislate against those law firms?
So this is what I'm saying, is even if you're looking at just the broad principle of a legal framework, when you then get to your point of how people are acting and have been for decades now, frankly, around the edges and interpretation, look, none of this is going to be easy at all. But actually, I'm going to revert back to my point of I don't agree with everything that's being proposed, but I am heartened at least to see that there seems to be some more thinking that has progressed than maybe we had previously thought the government was going to be ever capable of. Don't think all of it is in the right direction. Maybe then, as you say,
a lot of it won't get through anyway.
A lot of it won't get through anyway, and maybe some of it is kite flying, as you suggested. But they've certainly taken a really big bite out of something with the Home Secretary statement on Monday. Whether they can sort of now chew it, not to go into some really weird mixed metaphor, but they, as I say, they've really taken a chunk of something, and what now happens to it?
She's got to pull the back benches behind her.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the difficult thing for her. The I newspaper, Tories pledged to help the Home Secretary get her migration crackdown past angry Labour rebels. And we know how powerful these are. I mean, although, Starmer did first of all stomp on rebels and fire a few, didn't he? Certainly with the U-turn in welfare and things like that.
They're empowered.
Held all the power.
They're empowered.
They
and
are
as I
empowered
say,
because he did U-turn.
And this is not like one particular, troublemaker cabal. This is kind of people across, the spectrum of the Labour Party. So, it's not the usual names that you can just sort of go, well, they're always going to be chuntering in the corner. I say, once you've got the very reasonables, like, the Stella Creasy's, sort of being directly asked, well, do you think you'd vote about this? And her response is a very sort of, well, I'll have to wait and see. I mean, that's going to be a pretty big signal that actually they're going to have to put a lot of work in working with their own party.
I mean, this is a long way from being anywhere close to being implemented.
Which is then always so interesting, because it just reminds one of, despite Labour's overwhelming majority, which it was in terms of seats, actually the government is not. It's not that stable. Like it's kind of got breadth in terms of pure numbers. It's got no depth.
No.
Which then, as we've seen, whether it be about the welfare cuts or obviously with this, things, it's sort of wagon and its wheels can suddenly look quite shaky quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the backbenchers could squash this even before it makes it to the end of the week. The Daily Express, this is Kemi Badenoch, is saying steps in the right direction, but is asylum plan doomed to fail? Or that's at least what the Express is saying. Kemi Badenoch has urged Shabana Mahmood to work with her in the national interest. Can't see that happening.
I can't either. I'd also like to touch on the top of the story in the top right that Pierce Brosnan would like to return to Bond as a retired agent, because I've long held that he gets unfairly underrated as a Bond.
Oh, see, I think he deserves to be underrated as a Bond.
Oh, okay. Well, usually you try and want me to talk about some sort of cultural on-screen thing, and here is one that I actually have a view about, so I thought I would merely mention it.
I think the idea, because once I think, is it Disney or Amazon that have got Bond? Amazon, thought so. Once they start doing all the prequels, sequels, geekals and all that, there will be a Pierce Brosnan return as a retired agent.
For many reasons, the late 1990s and the early 2000s were kind to no one. And they were not kind to him with the scripts that he had.
They were terrible.
I'm just saying that I think...
But he is a very handsome...
In a different time... Exactly. In a different time, he may have been able to do more had the subject matter...
been less pathetic.
Do you mean just dreadful?
Dreadful. No, look, once Amazon want to make as much money as they possibly can, like Disney with the Star Wars, there will be so many different breakaway programs. I can definitely
he'll
see
have his place.
Pierce Brosnan in a front garden mowing the lawn and then suddenly having to dash off.
There's going to be some kind of
cardigan,
like chino and a Panama vibe going on here.
In his cardigan, having to go and save the world. The other story at the top there is snow and ice warning as -10 Celsius Arctic blast arrives. I did actually put the heating on today, but only because my sister's staying with me, but she's languishing in Claridge's currently, and I've got the heating on for no reason.
Hard life.
I know.
Oh no, but your little dog will be at home, no?
They're both dogs, but they don't need the heating on. They wear fur coats.
I was just trying to make you feel better.
So I put it on for my sister. Complete waste of money. That's all right, I'll give her a bill. The Telegraph, Mahmood turns air blue in blast at Liberals. She swore in the Commons. But actually what she was repeating is what she was called as a youngster. Farage unveils a £25 billion plan for Reeves to fill the budget shortfall. Is he going to donate some money?
I read this and sort of thought, this is kind of exactly what opposition parties do in opposition, because I did it for about 10 years when I was a sort of teeny tiny baby press off the Conservatives. You just sort of do some numbers, you put a few footnotes, you make them sound vaguely sensible.
Yeah.
You account for overtime inflation somewhere because that makes you sound intelligent.
Yeah.
And then you brief it to the Telegraph because they quite like writing stories about how the governments, particularly governments of a left-wing persuasion, have holes in their budget.
Yeah,
So,
that's very true.
I'm not just being entirely pejorative, but as far as I could make out from that, it was sort of that Farage was saying, oh, look, the government wastes some money here, we could spend it on other things. Okay.
But he's talking about the foreign budget, foreign aid budget.
Yes, which is a classic one to go off.
Which is a classic one to go off. But I thought 25 billion, he says, in savings. I thought it was lower than that. And I thought it was about 12 billion, and also...
But he's not, but he didn't say there was no over what time period, and so he may be talking over the life of a parliament or something, as opposed
that's
to an
a good
annual
point,
one.
actually. It could be over a couple of years.
Yes, that's how I'd taken that.
But also, we use quite a chunk of the foreign aid budget to pay for asylum seekers to stay in hotels.
Yes, as I say, like when you're in opposition, you sort of come up with these figures and then you sort of make them sound vaguely... As in, like, I'm not saying this is completely made up, but I'm saying there'll be so many variables in this that it's kind of not entirely clear what it might be talking about. But look, again, as it says later in the article, Zia Youssef, who's Reform's head of policy, has actually written for the Telegraph website. So perhaps when one gets a chance to sort of look at that, there might be a bit more of the detail or some sort of accompanying pamphlet document that they've based their numbers on.
Oh, there you go. I suppose they do pluck numbers out of the thin air, don't they? The Guardian. Starmer faces Labour revolt over hardline asylum plans. Of course, we knew that was coming. Reselling event tickets for profit to be outlawed. Reselling tickets, that's a good plan, isn't it? I quite like that.
I think various governments have been talking about, it's ticket touts, right, isn't it? Where you can sort of end up astronomical
Hundreds
prices,
of pounds,
which are then completely unaffordable for any sort of, normal person or family who wants to go for a treat. So I think if they're managing to do it, that sounds entirely a thing that I think would be good.
Yeah, I mean, the ministers had been considering allowing these touts and ordinary consumers to sell on a ticket for up to 30% above the original face value. Why? However, The Guardian understands that reselling a ticket at anything more than the price at which it was originally bought will be banned, which I think is fair.
Yeah,
you
and
don't
then
need to profit from it.
No, you don't. And then also it sort of says dozens of world-renowned artists, including Radiohead, Dua Lipa and Coldplay, have sort of said, oh, well, please keep to your original pledge, which is sort of nice because maybe reversing earlier cynicism, it's nice that actually some of these artists do want just, average fans, not to have to be super rich to come and actually hear their music, right?
It's really unfair that the tout is profiting from their talent. And
Yes,
they're not,
there's that.
because
Yes,
they're
there's
only
that as
selling
well.
it for 20 quid, and then the tout's selling it for 120
was
quid. They're getting 100 quid.
Was the Oasis tour recently?
The Oasis thing,
where the tickets were literally like becoming thousands of pounds.
And that's not going to, as far as I understand, that doesn't go to the
it's pure middleman.
band.
Yeah.
So that's not fair either. Right, quick break, and Amy and I'll be back in just a second.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie, and with me Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Independent. Trump's dramatic U-turn on Epstein. Release the files. Now, he could do this himself.
I heard you saying that, in your last hour.
The lawyer that I spoke to, he has the absolute authority to release these files. He knows there are shenanigans afoot, otherwise he would just release them. So even if they do vote to release the files, it's then got to go through the Senate that could squash it, and then he could squash it on his own desk.
I think I also heard with your guest in the last segment, I think it was a point that you made. I almost feel at this point that it's not even so much anything bad. I mean, look, we all know he's made these horrific comments about, you know, grab women by the pussy and all, and he definitely went to Epstein's parties and flew on the jet and all this kind of thing. But actually, it's not even so much that he's necessarily worried about anything that he's done, but all the other grot of implication in it. I don't know. These Epstein files.
Yeah, I mean, he's always denied, and look, there's no evidence, and I don't think we'll ever see any evidence, whether it's there or not, of him doing anything inappropriate with these girls. But there is apparently this photograph of him with a Democrat in a male Democrat in a compromising position that he wouldn't want to be exposed, and also that is apparently the compromat that Russia has. That was sent to him by.
Well, we can't discuss. We can't actually say what it is.
I can put my.
Okay, look, I think we're.
But he wouldn't want to get out.
Yeah, so I think we're sort of agreeing in terms of the general.
Which wouldn't be illegal.
Yes.
That.
Yes. So I was about to say,
men.
like the horrific grot about the Epstein and the underage girls. I think both of us are saying that Trump is not kind of implicated in that as the massive grot, but there is other material that could be embarrassing, if not
career-ending.
If not illegal.
No,
I think
illegal.
we're both kind of.
No, not between two lovely.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of agreeing on that. I was just so disappointed we can't sort of discuss it, because there was a fantastic chap I met at, and I genuinely can't say who it was, but it was like an ex-spy type at the Home Office, and the stuff that he would sort of say that the Russians genuinely would get up to was like beyond whatever you thought you knew, and he, we'd sort of sit there having a gin and tonic, and he'd just be like, Amy, I think I'm sort of slightly doing the whole, the spy that came in from the cold kind of, how I was just like, no, in fact I'm probably only like telling you about 50% because I know you have a slightly nervous disposition.
Well, I mean, it's always been suggested that Russia has compromats on Trump, and look, it wouldn't be surprising because he spent a lot of time in Russia, and they would have had cameras on him.
The 90s when standards were different in that part of the world as well.
Exactly.
That's not to excuse anything, by the way, but that's just a sort of cultural point.
But yeah, and also, he was beholden to Russia for a lot of money when nobody else would bail him out. The Russians bailed him out. And it would explain, if there was this compromat, it would explain how Trump appears to favour Putin, and certainly he can talk tough, and then he has a meeting with Putin and comes out and he's not talking tough anymore.
Yes, indeed.
So look, I don't think we'll ever get all of it anyway. But Trump saying release the files, if there are any lawsuits impending or any investigations pending on certain people, like President Clinton, for example, then those images and those files would be held back for legal reasons. Yep. So look, the U-turn is extraordinary, and it is for a reason.
Well,
it's not just that he's suddenly gone, well.
Although it is Trump, so he might actually just have gone,
Maybe.
well. But I think isn't there the sort of other element to this that's been around for, it's a couple of weeks, that it may be the case that Ghislaine Maxwell is thinking, because she's now in this incredibly like low security.
Oh, this holiday camp.
Camp of a prison, and she's kind of receiving reports go, treatment, and receiving like daily visits from her lawyers and sort of federal agents and all the rest of it. So the latest divination into any
that
of
she
this
says now is compromised.
Yeah, but the latest sort of divination is, well, she must have got some kind of this sort of sweetheart deal in the state, that she must be kind of singing like the proverbial canary, which is why her circumstances have changed so much from when she originally got that rightly hefty sentence. But that would be exactly the point, that if she's giving up the material that are allowing lawsuits to get started, that would then predicate a lot of this material
and
in the
keeping
files.
it away from the public eye.
Exactly. So that's why bringing it up, as the two could.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also, you can't trust any of them, can you? Really?
Well, I mean,
but they will find a way of wriggling out of it. But it's just that he knows something about the legal course of this that we are yet to find out. Because to suddenly, after going, it's a hoax.
No,
rubbish,
I don't actually believe he's done it unaware. I was sort of being slightly facetious about that point.
Yeah, he's definitely got a. He knows something we don't yet. The Metro is going for, Home Secretary reveals sweeping changes, Labour asylum mutiny begins, a new split looms as Starmer's MPs line up to criticise shameful, cruel, draconian policies. But it's all very well to do that if you can come up with a plan that would work.
Sure, but then as we were sort of just discussing in the break, the groundswell of opinion sort of on the Labour benches, did crush those proposed welfare reforms, which were in many ways actually a lot less emotive. Emotive. And, in and of that just creates an even bigger headache for Labour if their own party crush the one set of concrete things they've come forward regarding this issue. So whichever way they turn, none of it is looking, certainly not easy, but is all looking, I'd be quite worried if I was sat in the Home Office tonight.
Would you?
Yeah. I mean, more so than when I was sat in there most nights crying into my tea, but anyway.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be an easy sell, is it, at all? Oh, right. Oh, gosh, the Star, News of the Week, is going on this is a big campaign of theirs, and that is about Rachel Thieves, they're calling her, odds on to axe flutter mad tax hike. So this was another thing that was run up the flagpole, wasn't it?
Yes.
Taxing betting.
We've discussed it. Yeah.
And it looks like they're saying now that it's a safe bet that she will scrap her horse racing bet tax rise.
Yeah, so the issue here was that at the moment, if you're basically bricks and mortar, i.e. if you're placing a bet literally at the racehorse track, or if you're going to a physical bookies, at the moment the owners of those premises pay a 15% tax, whereas if you're betting online, those platforms pay a 22% tax. There'd been some talk about raising the kind of bricks and mortar ones, and then possibly even raising it even more. So the whole of the horse racing industry for months has been saying this would literally decimate us. It would cost thousands of jobs. It would literally ruin horse racing, because literally so much of going to a day at the horses, as I understand it, more so than actually quite a lot of other sports, is how you bet literally at the track. That's kind of like part and parcel of it. So yeah, I should imagine there are lots of people in the racing community who are delighted about this, but actually just speaks to the bigger disaster coming. That, not being funny, that if Rachel Reeves a few months ago thought that she was going to be able to, raid a relatively small pot over here, which she was then going to hopefully duplicate in lots of different places to somehow make up a bigger amount, and she's fallen at the first post, getting all racing aggressive
It was very good.
No, but do you see what I mean? And
First
actually, if she was going, you know, she's not going to be able to raid all these, what she thought were small pots, because the racing community went bonkers, and a month later, if the Racing Post, actually the FT is also reporting it, to be believed, she's actually totally backed off that. And so
she's backed off everything.
She's backed off everything. You know, she's backed off the really big ones like the, you know, income tax. If she's backing off these, you know, other smorgasbord of kind of pots that she thought she was going to make, she's literally left with going down the back of the sofa.
Yeah, milkshake tax apparently. I mean, that's going to raise fortunes, isn't it? Yeah, that milkshake that we all have every day is just going to cost us a little bit more. I don't know, God knows, but I know that one thing, and that is that Amy will be with us on budget night to have a look at what she's done and what the political ramifications will be for this government, because it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, but that's next Wednesday. Amy Fisher, thank you very much.
I look forward to seeing you then.
See you next week. Right, coming up, Talk Back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It's great to have your company this morning for this full hour of you talking back. No guests, nothing else here, just you and me. And we've obviously got to talk about Shabana Mahmood's speech, the asylum policy. And she's talking tough. She's talking really, really tough about what needs to happen. Some of the proposals, she's now being called a racist over, because this is a tough set of rules. This is the first time that the asylum policy would have changed in any significant way since the Second World War. And she has come out and said, look, it is clear that what's going on in this country is divisive. It is dividing us. It is not helpful. It's not good so far. I guess a lot of people would agree with that. But she's talking about some really big moves. First of all, it would be removing families, entire families from the UK, offering them money to leave, paying them to leave, and then if they say no, then them being forcibly removed. There's talk about having to be checked every 2.5 years once that their asylum claim is accepted. There's talk about not being able to become a citizen for 20 years, not just the 5 years that it is now, and that people will have to prove that they're not a burden on the state. There's also the new a new rule that asylum would only ever be a temporary measure, as indeed the agreement was with Ukraine. That was the agreement with Ukrainians coming over, that as soon as Ukraine was safe to return to, then everybody that had come here would be required to return to Ukraine. This very much follows the Denmark model. You might have heard a little bit about the Denmark model, which was actually implemented by a left-leaning government, surprisingly. And there was a lot of pushback, and there still is pushback from Denmark, politically speaking, on some of the issues. And one of them was, which I think has been dropped by Shabana Mahmood, was the idea that if they're carrying any jewellery with them or any assets, that they would be stripped of those assets to pay towards their asylum care. What Shabana Mahmood is talking about, though, is taking cars and electric bikes off migrants if somehow they've managed to buy a flash car or an electric bike, which I can't imagine many would be able to do that they would be stripped of those assets in order to pay for their keep. So there's quite a lot of big changes here. And I wonder if you actually buy it. If you actually buy it in any way. And I've just gone through the papers with Amy, who was saying, well, you know, look, there's already pushback from the Labour backbenchers, and they're very powerful, and they are emboldened by Keir Starmer already doing a U-turn on the benefits bill cuts. And this is way more controversial than that. These are really big changes, and I want to know if you are somebody who has achieved asylum in this country and you're settled here now, how you feel about, I'm not sure if this is going to be backdated. I'm almost certain it won't be. It'll be new people coming through that will be required to wait 20 years and prove that they're not a burden to the state. And there'll also be other rules on families joining, but you know, just sending over these young men and then hoping that in a couple of years their families can join them. That's going to be chopped as well. So there's a lot of big changes, and not least of which these enforced returns and this denial of settled status for 2 decades. So do you agree with this? Do you think that this is too tough? Do you think that it doesn't go far enough? The idea that once your country is deemed safe, that you will be returned to it. But that hasn't worked so far with Albania, which is deemed a safe country, that people from Albania coming here do not have automatic right to remain. They do not have right to claim asylum or refugee status because they're not fleeing. I mean, the Albania signed up to the ECHR. But still, it is proving to be impossible to return people who've been denied right to remain back to Albania. So this isn't kind of adding up, is it? Is this too little too late? I mean, Reform is saying that they're out reforming Reform with some of these policies. But are you more likely to believe Reform and less likely to believe Labour? Do you believe they will ever get any of this done? Should we be seizing assets? Should we be deporting whole families back to countries once they're deemed safe to return to? Is this far right? I mean, like I said, in Denmark, there's been a lot of political pushback, but this was a left-leaning government that got these really severe changes through into Denmark, although, again, there are lots of Albanians in Denmark that they've so far not been able to deport. They still live there. They're still costing the taxpayer in Denmark. So there's a lot wrong with, it seems, the whole world systems, and how we move forward from this position, what we actually do. So listen, give me a call on this, 0344 499 1000. I've got a message here saying Tony Adams in Australia and Donald Trump in America stopped immigration in 1 week. Viktor Orban in Hungary didn't let it start. The UK does not want to stop it. Why? And that's Derek in Hertfordshire. How do we? Is it because we don't want it to stop? I don't know. You're going to have to tell me. And Benson says the best way to curb illegal immigration is to rejoin the EU. We certainly did have more control when we were in the EU than we do now. Let's go to the calls. And John, who's in West Lothian this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning to you.
What do you make of these new policies by Shabana Mahmood?
Absolute load of rubbish.
Really? You don't think they'll ever take off?
No. I believe that she is almost genuine in what she wants to do, but I don't believe that the Labour Party will ever accept them, and I don't believe that this is what the whole party actually wants. You know, we're in a situation now where they have, this whole immigration thing is overtaking the country, and we have a situation in Scotland where the Greens have said we need an extra 1 million people to continue, you know, with employment and everything else. It's a load of absolute rubbish.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because the birth rates are down in this country. In fact, they are across the Western world, actually. And that's all to do with, I think, the cost of living, the cost of getting housing, all of those things, right? People are choosing smaller families if they're working to provide for them. You know, they can't afford to have more children. So now that's where migration comes in, legal migration comes in. But to be told you need an extra 1 million people in Scotland, you must go, well, hang on a minute, that's crazy. So you don't think they want to stop it?
No, I don't believe they do, because, you know, our whole system about housing, about education, about the
healthcare, yeah.
It's impossible. I mean, I actually work for a camping group trying to get a new health centre, and we can't get it because there is not enough money there for it. But we're encouraging housing development because we say we have a housing crisis and everything else, and that's with the existing population. It's not about new population. I've got nothing against people who genuinely can come in and contribute to a society and can work and pay their taxes. I've got absolutely nothing with that. I've worked with all sorts of people over many, many years, and I'm absolutely supportive of these people, but we cannot support it as it currently stands.
But what the Greens would argue is if you had an extra 1 million taxpayers in Scotland, then maybe you could afford that health centre.
But they're not going to do that. What we're encouraging people to do is to come in and hopefully may contribute to it. There is no guarantee to do with that. And that's the danger.
Do you think that any asylum seeker or even legal migrant should be barred, even if they are taxpayers, from the health system, the education system? They should have to pay for all of that on top of being here.
No.
Or if they're taxpayers, they get it
Yes, no, I absolutely agree that if they can come into this country and pay their dues and get a proper job, and it's been acceptable that they are legitimate immigrants and not these people that come across in boats who have no idea who they are, and you know, could be terrorists, could be anything, and you know, it's a totally different thing. I am all for anybody who can come in and contribute to society, pay their dues. I'm one of, Petrie, I've probably told you before, I'm a very old person, and and therefore I've paid my dues for, you know, all these years, and many other people have. That we should be able to say that yes, if people want to come in and contribute to society, then they should be accepted, because that's the way that this country has been for generations. And I am 100% for it, but not for people who want to come in and contribute nothing.
Yeah, I mean that it is completely unfair, and people who've never contributed, who are benefiting from those of us who have done nothing but contribute. But I just wonder how you do that, because you could, with the best will in the world, I'm just trying to think this through, you could have a legal migrant come to Scotland, into West Lothian, with a job, right? So he or she's got a job, and they work for 6 years in that job, paying tax and doing all of that, and then they get made redundant. So they have to go on benefits, and then their family get benefits as well, and their kids are getting, you know, free healthcare and free education, and their wife is as well, or their husband is as well. There will come a point where they're taking out more than they've put in.
Yeah, but Petrie, I have no objection to that, because they have tried and they have made it. Because nobody can say that you're guaranteed a job for life. No, you know, these things happen to people, genuine people who live, you know.
But should they be made to leave once their job is no longer there? No.
No, they shouldn't.
Right.
No, they shouldn't. I accept that 100%. But if they've never contributed, that's a different thing altogether. If they have come in here and they have tried and they have worked, and you know, their family are, you know, they're in schools and do whatever, I have absolutely no objections to that at all. And I think the vast majority of people in Scotland or elsewhere would accept that. Circumstances change. You know, all of our lives, circumstances change. You know, there'll be the best will in the world. Everybody wants to work and make a contribution, but circumstances can happen. So you cannot penalise people because of that. But if they come in and they don't want to do it, that's a different thing altogether.
But of course, anybody coming here and seeking asylum and refugee status is not allowed to work. They're not allowed to contribute until their case has been heard and accepted.
Yeah, well, I accept that, but I think that you've got to say that if it's a genuine refugee, then you have to go through the proper process. I mean, I think that is fair. I think that the people that come across in boats are not doing that. They don't, you know, if you've thrown away all your IDs and all the rest of it, why should this country have to accept these people? You know, we don't know who they are. We don't know what they are. We don't know what their background is. Therefore, we should not be accepting them. If they're coming across with genuine roots, and people genuinely do, and we have done this as a country for many years, accept them, and you know, and but if they don't want to speak the language, if they don't want to comply with our standards, and that's not, you know, and you know, people talk about religion and all the rest of it, but it's about ethics, it's about standards. And if they don't want to do that, then I'm sorry, but they shouldn't be here.
No, I completely agree with that. You know, I think that if Shabana Mahmood does, as we're anticipating, come up with safe and legal routes for migrants, then it will be possible to say that anybody coming across a boat is illegal. At the moment, they're not illegal. Because it's not illegal to claim asylum, and the only place you can claim it is on British soil or in British waters. So but if you say, but we've given you safe and safe and legal routes, and you've chosen not to take that route, then the law could be very different about boats coming across. And I've always questioned why they don't do that anyway, which they don't. But hopefully this week she will come up with, hopefully those deals have already been done, I doubt that they have, these safe legal routes for people to come in and apply for asylum or refugee status via these different routes, hopefully.
Yeah, but she's changed her position 100% from what she used to do, which I accept that circumstances change, and therefore I will respect a politician who may change her, their position.
Given this different set of circumstances.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely, and I accept that. But what I think that we have to be realistic about this. That we cannot go on taking people who just turn up, who are of an age, and they've abandoned their families to come here. These people that are coming into this country are going to come here in the best interests of the British people.
Yeah. I mean, in the ideal world, you would hope so, wouldn't you? But human beings, on the whole, suck. Big fat lemons. John, you don't. You're lovely. But thank you very much indeed for calling in. Right, quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk, and this is Talk Back. And I'm Petrie, in case you're wondering. Now, we're talking about the new asylum policy reforms. This is the biggest shake-up of immigration since the Second World War. This is Labour getting tough on migration, getting really tough on it. They're planning to make it, what's the term I'm trying to think of? Hostile environment. A hostile environment. I mean, basically, the government warns that being granted refugee status is essential to receive the ability to live in this country forever, is essentially at the moment, and that has got to change. So at the moment, if those people who get granted refugee status, they assume that then they can just stay forever. That will change. Quadrupling the time successful asylum seekers must wait to claim permanent residency in the UK, from 5 years to 20 years. And during that time, the remaining refugees initially will have to be checked every 2.5 years. So they'll have to almost reapply every 2.5 years to say that they still deserve to be in this country. And at that point, if the Home Office can prove that the country that they were seeking refuge from is no longer considered dangerous, then they will be removed. That is the plan. So another point is that financial support for asylum seekers will now be withdrawn for certain people. It doesn't say who they are, but they're saying that it will be withdrawn. Currently, the government has a legal obligation to provide support to asylum seekers who would otherwise be destitute. But the document says the government will remove this and insist that those with the right to work who choose not to will receive no report. So that's new. So those who choose not to work will not get benefits. Once their asylum claim is going through and they're allowed to work, they will not be able to draw on the public purse. So that's new. And there's going to be a new body designed to speed up the process of appeals and things like that. So they're told to leave, then they mount an appeal because it doesn't cost them anything. It all comes out of the British taxpayer. More failed asylum seekers will be deported sooner, saving the taxpayer money. There'll be professionally trained adjudicators, the document says, and they will be able to adjudicate early whether somebody has a right to remain here or not, and if they don't have a right to remain, they will be required to leave. And the appeals process will be down to one appeal. So there'll be the original court case or the original adjudication that will say, right, you have to leave. They are allowed one appeal, and on that appeal, if it comes back as negative or whatever, they will then be required to leave. Families and individuals will be offered money to leave first, and if they don't take the money, then they'll be deported. I don't know, none of this has been beefed out, right? So I'm giving you as much as I know about this at the moment. So there will be pushback on this, we know that, and I can't see this lasting more than a couple of weeks. But I am incredibly cynical. So, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Give me a call. What do you think? Do you think this is a good thing? If you are somebody who has got settled status here now or is trying for settled status, do you think it's fair to have to wait 20 years instead of 5 years to get that status? And if you're waiting 20 years, you could have had an entire family by then, and those children not know anything about the country that you came from, and they're all going to be deported together, the whole family. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's reasonable? Or are you just so totally bereft of any belief that any of this will ever happen? Give me a call. 03444 991 1000. Paul is in Stockport. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, good evening, Pastor.
Good evening. Good to speak to you. What do you make of all of these changes?
I think this could well be the last final nail in the coffin of Labour. Because, I mean, I voted for this show and I've always voted for Labour, but I'm so disillusioned now with it all.
What has particularly disillusioned you?
Well, I watched the Commons thing today, and when she was talking, the Home Secretary, and there was when people get up and talk and ask questions,
and yeah,
there was tons of Labour backbenchers. You could see they're not going to support this. The writing's on the wall already. I'm like you. I don't think it'll last 2 weeks.
No.
This
will be another U-turn, won't it?
Yeah, gotta be. I mean, there's a time bomb ticking where I'm from Stockport. I'm in Ashton at the moment, but like I said before to you, but there's a time bomb ticking away, and it's every day we're seeing things, and everybody I speak to, I've lived around here all my life, know everybody, and everyone's saying the same things, you don't recognise the place anymore.
I mean, she was right about that, wasn't she? She said that the situation is divisive, is dividing communities, it's dividing the country, and I think credit to her in a way. I mean, I have no love for Labour or for the Tory or for any of them, to be frank.
No, likewise.
Yeah, but credit to her. She is at least biting the bullet. Is that the right term? She's at least saying, look, this can't go on. This is ridiculous. The system is not fit for purpose. It doesn't achieve none of it works. So we're going to have to do something pretty radical here. So credit to her for that. But I just don't know whether she'll get the backing of the Labour. I mean, like you said today, they were booing and heckling her, their own Home Secretary.
Yeah, I mean, she was talking tough, and I took my hat off to her, really, because I didn't really fancy her for the job, but fair play to her.
She's grasped the nettle, hasn't she?
She did, and I think she put a bit of shock treatment by, she actually swore at one point.
Yeah.
Which has since, covered, they've since sort of dubbed it out, but I watched it live, and
it was quite a shock. I'd certainly be fired if you repeated it on this forum.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I think that she is talking tough, and I do think her special power in this whole debate is that she is a brown woman. Right, I think that is her special power.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it a bit with Petrie Patel, because she is able to stand there and say, look, racism is real, and division is real, and my parents came across as they were not refugees, were they? I think they were just immigrants that just came here legally.
Yeah.
But she's seen it done the right way. She wants it done the right way, and she's got a foot on the pitch with this, hasn't she? Because she can talk about it from her perspective, which is not the same perspective as you and I would have.
No, but I also think, the part near to where I live, I mean, we're on the third generation now, and they're still not talking our language.
Yeah, see, that's
the kids are walking about and they're talking a foreign language, and then the play area, and I took the grandkids, and some of these people have been here 50 years, 60 years. That the generation.
It's usually women, isn't it, that don't speak the language. I mean, that's an integration issue. That's political decline. That is politics just not even thinking that was a concern, right? That's just bad.
Yeah.
That's just really bad, and it is so awful where you see people that don't integrate. You think, well, why did you come here? What was the point of you wanting to live in Britain if you're not actually even really living in Britain?
Well, that's it. They have their own communities and they don't integrate it, and we know that. If you look at parts of Oldham and Rochdale and Hyde and stuff like that, they have their own little communities. But there's just a feeling of anger. I mean, I only last week, the only dentist I can get at the moment, I go to the Manchester Students Dental Hospital, because I got during the COVID, the practice I went to in Ashton actually closed and reopened as a Bupa type place. So they struck quite a lot of the NHS patients off. So the only dentist I can visit now, I'm 63, is the students. At Manchester Uni, and that's always packed now. I mean, there's loads of people in the waiting room.
And you let students, presumably they're operating under supervision, and they're third year dental students.
Set up and what have you. they've got like tutors looking after them and all that. But at the same time, they are sort of practicing on you, really, aren't they? And at my age, really, it's just keeping on top of stuff, really.
Well, our respective ages. I mean, things are falling off, falling out, and caving in, aren't they? But yeah, I mean, that's awful. That's pretty bad. I mean, the only dentist that I can get is you have to pay privately.
Yeah.
And it's just prohibitive.
Well, I can't afford to pay privately.
No, and nobody can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm supposed to have some treatment, and I said to it's £6,000, he said, and I went, just to have a bridge, something done with that. And I just said, yeah, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
£6,000?
That's unbelievable.
On a back tooth?
No.
They can't even see it. No.
No.
But no, I agree with you that there is, but a lot of these issues that we're talking about, the waiting lists on the NHS, the housing, all of those things, they have been created by government policy. They're not created by these people. They're created by government policy. First of all, allowing this ghettoisation, which should never be, shouldn't be a thing, by not, inviting people to integrate properly, by governments not building infrastructure, by them wasting billions of our pounds on rubbish and not funneling it back to us. It's not the fault of the migrants, really. They're just taking the opportunity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your previous caller alluded to it when you said Scotland, 1 million people
needed for jobs.
Last week, the Labour Party said about getting people back to work who shouldn't be clear. Well, let's
start
train
there.
them up for these jobs.
I agree.
Let's bring the...
But it's cheaper and easier to bring people in from overseas. That's what's so wrong about it. So it's poor government management of all persuasions that are not managing, the skills that we need.
Yeah.
In Australia, every year has a list of skills that they need, and they will either educate to that list, or, which is what we should be doing. If we need lots of doctors, we say, right, we're going to pay your university fees if you want to become a doctor. But you have to pay us back with at least 5 years' work in the NHS, right? It's not, I don't think it's rocket science.
No.
If we're short of lawyers, we do the same. If we're short of hairdressers, we do the same. We pay for their education and then ask them to give that back in terms of working in their particular field.
I wonder how many get chased up, though, because a few of the girls at the dentist last week were saying they're going to do 2 years NHS, what they're required, and then they're going private.
Yeah.
Some are going back to India. Sri Lanka's a new place where they're doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Indonesia, and they get a lot of money because a lot of private people will just go out and pay.
Yeah, and also the NHS dentistry is handled really, really badly, and they're not paid, they're not compensated properly for the work that they do. So it's hardly surprising that they go, well, stuff this for a game, I'm off to do private practice. They shouldn't, they're not, they've studied all those years. You don't want to then just work for pennies, do you?
Yeah, no.
And that, again, is a government decision. That was, many governments deciding that they would underpay dentists so that they've all left the profession. So we want someone to blame. And the people we should blame are the people that we pay a fortune to sit in Westminster and do flap all.
Yeah.
They're the people we should blame 100% of the time. Yeah. Paul, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. You know that I've told you this before, I was born there, so in Stockport.
Oh, yeah, you did indeed. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
So I always love it when I see Stockport pop up there. Go, ooh.
You're looking very well as well.
Oh, thank you.
Now, aren't you? You're much better now.
Bless your heart. Thank you. It's very kind. Right. Quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie and this is Talk Back. This is your opportunity to talk back on the stories of the day, and we're talking about the Home Secretary and how she has come up with some really significant changes to the asylum policies. And she's being accused of introducing draconian measures against refugees for trying to come to this country. Jeremy Corbyn has, of course, waded in on this, hasn't he? But more families will be deported. This is a huge change. The document says the hesitancy to deport families can lead to a particularly perverse incentive, such as people risking bringing their child to the UK illegally on the assumption that this will make them less likely to be removed. So the government has announced how it will now change this. In plain language, it means that more families will be removed either voluntarily through cash incentives or by force, and children won't be separated from the parents during deportations, though it is understood. So it will be whole families that are required to leave. I can't see how they're going to do that, because there will be children who were born here who have lived here for a couple of years, or that's all they've ever known. So I don't know. I just don't know how they're going to do it. And also with the 20 years now to wait until they become the citizens, they could have set up families and jobs and lives in the UK over 20 years. I can't see how judges and lawyers are going to let this happen. Anyway, give me a call. Tell me what you think. 0344 499 1000. Ernie says, I haven't got a problem with migrant families who are a stable family with children and one or both parents are working and contributing to this country. The problem I've got, being a family man myself, is that my family and the migrant families could be at risk from thousands of young men with no family here who we know nothing about. They are the ones that should be sent home. A good, stable family is the backbone of any country. It gives you responsibility. If this government or any future government wants to sort migration out to make sure that the people who want to come here can stand on their own 2 feet, and that's from Ernie. And I completely agree with that, actually, that they shouldn't really be able to draw on the welfare system unless they've paid into it for a considerable amount of time. Max says, I think most people don't have an issue with people genuinely fleeing war or danger to come to this country. However, why are they allowed to roam around and do what they like while they're here? If they were held at hotels and not allowed to come and go as they please until they've been identified and their status confirmed, then I honestly don't think people would be so fed up with it all. I really hope the new policies will work, but I fear they won't do one little bit to change anything at all. And that's from Maxine in Maidstone. Yeah, the trouble is that would be imprisoning them, wouldn't it, if they weren't free to come and go as they please. Anyway, if you haven't heard Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary announced on social media her intentions with these new proposals.
In the last 4 years, 400,000 people claimed asylum here. Over 100,000 are housed and supported at taxpayers' expense, putting huge pressure on local communities. We need to reduce the numbers coming here illegally. We need to remove more people who have no right to be here. We will always be a country that gives sanctuary to those fleeing danger, but we must restore order and control.
Okay, so that's what she put out on social media, and in Parliament she stated that the plans would fix the broken system.
What I'm interested in is recognising the extent of the problems that this government has inherited and coming up with proper solutions to those problems. For me, this is not about party politics or individual politicians. It's a moral mission to fix a broken system that is unfair, costing the country far too much money and putting huge pressure on communities. So I would say to him, engage with the detail of the proposal rather than playing party politics himself.
It was quite a feisty thing, and she was booed a lot by her own people as well, and lots of shaking of heads. Well, earlier I spoke to Dr. Alex Powell, who's a professor of law at Warwick University, and he told me that the proposed Denmark system is not guaranteed to work.
There's also a bigger issue here with the government's proposals, and that is the presumption that deterrence is an effective element. And actually, if you look at the evidence, including the Home Office's own evidence, it is pretty universal in terms of establishing the idea that the majority of people coming to the UK do not have a particularly strong understanding of reception conditions. So things like access to the labour market, which you can see is massively restricted within these regulations and has been continued to be restricted, in fact, in the UK over many years. There's sort of this presumption that that will lead to less people coming. It's a very commonsensical answer, but actually study after study suggests that these are not particularly salient in the reason for people making journeys.
Well, no, presumably because those traffickers and those people who are making money are not going to point out the negatives to they just want the money for that trip across on the boat. The rest of it they don't care about. But when you look at deportations, even if that doesn't work as a deterrent for many years, eventually that message does get through. Eventually, if people see that they are deported or they're not allowed to remain in the UK, or once their country has been that they left has been deemed safe to return, that message will get through. And I think that the British people want to see those deportations.
Well, I think there's a complexity there. You know, the example that the government has cited frequently is Denmark. And in Denmark, we have seen, for example, the revocation of refugee status in regard to a number of people from Syria. And yet the vast majority of those people where refugee status have been revoked actually have not been removed. They continue to reside in Denmark, and they continue to reside at the cost to the taxpayer. And actually, I think there is a real need here to pay cautious attention to how the evidence plays out. The reality is that many of the elements implemented by government in recent years, and again within this policy, so take for example the 2.5-year review, what that actually looks like in practice is a massive amount more resource being required by the Home Office, people less able to find stable employment after they've secured refugee status, people less able to find stable housing after they've secured refugee status. So the likely implication of that is actually further cost put onto the taxpayer. And I do think it's really, really important here that we keep account of how the repeated iteration of immigration as this really, really significant issue creates people's desire to see, for example, deportations. And actually, if we had a more measured conversation where we recognise that people make dangerous journeys, as you yourself said in the introduction, partly because of the lack of safe and legal routes. At the moment, we often hear politicians talk about this idea of queue jumping, but the reality is from a very large number of countries, there are not really any legal means by which someone can come to the UK to seek asylum.
So that was a conversation that I was having earlier. I'm going to take a quick break at this point, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. A couple of messages. Chris says it's easy to stop the asylum seekers coming here. Don't give them anything, then they wouldn't come. Yeah, except we're obliged to under various international laws, but I guess that would work. And Gary saying, are you back on from 10 on Mondays? I know it feels that way, doesn't it? But no. Although next Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, I am here from 10 o'clock. So a full week of me at the original time from 10 until 1 next Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. But tomorrow, or today, tonight, I'm on from, I know. It's Where's Wally, isn't it, with Petrie? Where's Petrie? 11 o'clock tonight and tomorrow night. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, let's go to your calls. And Janice has called in from Essex. Hello, Janice. How are you?
Oh, hi, Petrie. How's your beautiful dog?
Oh, they're both of them gorgeous, wonderful.
Oh, you've got two now.
I've got two. I've got Humphrey, who's the puppy, who's 9 months old. And he's very naughty, but so adorable. And Bailey, the older dog, who's 12.
Yeah, I know you're Bailey.
Yeah.
What happened to the cat? What happened to the cat?
Edith, evil Edith. She is banned from the living room, not by me, but by Humphrey.
Dear.
But she has got her own bedroom, so she's quite happy with that.
Right, could I please say, I listened to you earlier. I'm horrified. Horrified. This woman doesn't even know what she's talking about. She's not going to get one iota through. She might get one thing through, that they could have one chance. What she's going to do is never going to get through. What they're trying to do is what Nigel wants to do. This is horrific. You cannot just go and take people that have lived here for years and just say, you're out. It is horrible. It's terrible. The people that
so you think she's gone too far? You think this is going too far?
She won't get it through.
I don't think she will either.
All she wants is to throw it in because she wants to throw her hat in the ring to be a PM. That's what she's doing. None of it is going to get through. None of it. It's all fluff.
Yeah, I can't see people who've been here for 20 years being told to leave.
You can't.
I can't see it.
Horrible. It's terrible. That's what Nigel wants to do. That's what Trump's doing. I don't want to see that. That's horrible. That is terrible. We're not that kind of people here.
That's really, really interesting you should say that, because I think a lot of people would say, yeah, get them out. They haven't got a right to be here. But it's...
To a degree. To a degree. We can take out the criminals. We can't take out normal people. We can't do it.
And as you said, that's what Trump is doing, right? He's rounding it. First of all, he said they were going to go after criminals.
No, he's fine anybody.
And
anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody.
And they're allowed to profile now by skin colour in ISIL.
Well, we're not like that, and I'm hoping that... I like Nigel. He's my MP, not I've ever seen him, but I don't want him going down Trump Road. And I think it's horrendous.
But you see...
Even she is talking about.
Yeah, I mean, she said, look, either we do it, either Labour does it in a slightly nuanced way, or something worse gets in and does it later.
Who?
Meaning reform.
Well, I like Nigel. I like a lot of what he says, but not on this scale. Not on this scale, and not on the NHS. I think he needs to shut his mouth right now, because he's going too far. He's going too far. And I think we are not that kind of people, that we would just uproot people that have been here decades and made a life here, and we're going to do what Trump does. Kick them out. No, I'm sorry, I'm angry about this. I'm angry about it. You can hear it in my voice.
I really can, Janice, and it's really interesting to me because I genuinely thought there'd be a lot of support for these policies, but I'm really not hearing it, and also I think there's a lot of disbelief that this, like you said, will ever get anywhere. Yeah.
Don't believe a word she said.
But if Labour don't do something, right, if they don't come up with something, I don't know, maybe a watered down version of this, then reform will get in, and then it will be, Trump 2.0.
Well, maybe he's got a few people around him that are pretty good. Maybe in a year, 18 months, he can get some people that calm him down. He's got a few people that are quite good. But unless he calms it down and he stops opening his mouth and coming out with his claptrap, he's lost. He will be lost. Honestly, he will be lost. And I think...
Yeah, I mean, what he was saying about minimum wage for young people was absolutely disgraceful, saying that £7.55 an hour is too much for young people to be earning.
He said a lot that's wrong. A lot. And I think he's got Zia, who I have a lot of respect for. He's got a couple of people around him, but he needs to start shutting up. He's never here because they'll attack him. He can't even come in Clapton.
He's got something like 11 jobs, hasn't he?
Well, I don't know how many. He's never here. He's more in America, and I'm scared that he's just gone down Trump route. And I'm scared that he cannot chuck people out that have been here and built their lives, and you're going to just throw them out for what? Purely because they haven't taken a test to be British? Really? I do agree. We do need to have people come in, and they really do need to speak the language. But I'm appalled.
Yeah, they have to speak the language, and I do think there is an issue.
I'm appalled.
I think there is also an issue with, people languishing on benefits, but that is true also of a lot of British people as well. That shouldn't be allowed to happen unless you've got a good reason, a good health reason, or a good reason to be on them.
But do you not think that these people are taking away money for our young people, where a government could be helping our young people who have lost their way, and we could help them to get their dreams? How about helping them to get their dreams?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any sort of positive movements at the moment, does it? It all seems to be rather negative about people we hate, people we don't like, people we don't want, people, rather than going, well, look, how about stepping up and helping people be decent citizens?
Well, I think we're losing our way a bit at the moment. I do, but I'm worried for our young people, because I think this government should be more focused on what our young people are doing, because they're just sitting there languishing because they don't know what to do, and we're not helping them. The government is not helping them, and we need to get young people to say, what do you want? We will help you, but we're not doing it. We're leaving.
Well, as I always say,
people.
Yeah, as I always say, Janice, we've broken the social contract with them. I don't blame them for not working, because what's the point?
No, I don't blame.
They never own a house unless we make that possible. Yeah, we have. I completely agree with you. Janice, thank you. Great call. Janice really angry about the prospect of us, chucking people out who've made a home here. And I don't know how popular that view will be. I have a sneaking suspicion that many